All right, let's dive in. We're tackling Ramit Sethi's I Will Teach You to Be Rich Today.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
A classic and packed with so much advice. For this deep dive, though, we really want to get to the core stuff that's going to help all of us, level up our finances.
For sure.
And I think Sethi really hits the ground running. He challenges this whole idea that you need like a financial expert to manage your money well.
Yeah, right off the bat, he's like, you can do this yourself. You don't need to pay someone a ton of money to figure this out.
Right. Like maybe we can even do it better than the so-called experts if we just put in a little effort.
Exactly. And he's especially skeptical of those financial advisors who work on commission.
Oh yeah, he does not hold back there. He's got that whole example of the stock stammer to illustrate how easily we can fall for this idea of expertise. I'd love to hear you break that down a bit.
Yeah, so think about it. You've got this scammer, right?
Go.
And they're sending out random stock predictions to tons of people. Just by pure chance, some of those predictions are going to be right.
Right, just the odds.
Exactly. So then the scammer focuses on the people who got those lucky predictions and convinces them that they've got some special insight.
Like they've cracked the code or something.
Right. It's all about survivorship bias. We only see the successes and not the countless failures behind them.
So it's not skill, it's just manipulating the odds.
Pretty much. And Sethi wants us to recognize these biases so we don't get fooled. Building wealth is about taking control, not just blindly following some supposed expert.
Okay, so we're ditching the gurus and taking charge. And I think that leads perfectly into Sethi's big idea, conscious spending.
Yes. It's not about deprivation.
Right, it's not about being a penny pincher.
It's about being intentional with your money, making choices that align with your values and goals.
He breaks it down into these four main buckets: fixed costs, investments, savings goals, and guilt-free spending money.
Yeah, he actually suggests percentage breakdowns for each bucket too, adjusting them based on age and income. Like for someone who's a bit younger, he suggests allocating a bit more to guilt-free spending.
Makes sense. You got to enjoy life too. So I'm curious, thinking about your own spending, how do you imagine these buckets would look for you? Like, what are some of your biggest fixed costs? And what are you excited to allocate to that guilt-free spending bucket?
That's a good question.
And on top of that, Sethi's got this big wins strategy, which I think really resonates with your love for efficiency.
Oh yeah, big fan of that.
Instead of sweating over every tiny expense, you focus on optimizing a couple of major areas that have the biggest impact, like finding a cheaper apartment or negotiating a better deal on your phone plan.
Right. Those are the moves that can really move the needle. Why waste time on small stuff when you can make a big difference with just a few strategic changes?
Totally. And for managing those day-to-day expenses, he's got this the envelope system. You basically allocate cash to different envelopes for different spending categories.
It's old school, but it works.
Yeah, it's super visual, so you really know where your money's going. So we've got this framework for conscious spending, which is great, but how do we make this a habit? How do we make it so we don't have to constantly think about it? I'm sensing Sethi has some ideas about that.
Oh, absolutely. He's all about automating your finances.
Tell me more about that.
He calls it the financial assembly line. It's basically a system of automatic transfers between your accounts, making sure your money goes where it needs to: bills, savings, investments, even some fun money.
It's like you're setting up a system where your money works for you even while you're sleeping. And then there's this next $100 concept, which I'm really intrigued by.
Yeah, that's a cool one. It encourages you to be intentional with every dollar you earn. Before you even get your paycheck, you already know where that money is going.
So you're not just letting it slip through your fingers, you've got a plan.
Exactly. It's about shifting your mindset from reactive to proactive with your finances.
And the beauty of automation is that it plays to our natural tendency to, well, maybe procrastinate a bit.
Yeah, we all do it.
By setting things up beforehand, you remove the burden of constant decision-making. In this case, being a little lazy can actually be a good thing.
For sure. And this leads us nicely into the world of investing, which can be kind of intimidating, especially with all the talk about market volatility and risk.
I think a lot of people have this fear, like, what if I lose all my money? So how does Seth approach that common fear?
Well, he's very data-driven. He acknowledges that risk is there, but he says that by diversifying and investing for the long term, you can really minimize that risk. He's not about picking individual stocks or anything. He's all about asset allocation. Like what mix of stocks, bonds, and cash should you have in your portfolio?
Yeah, it makes sense. Spreading your bets instead of putting all your eggs in one basket?
Exactly. And he's a big fan of index funds.
Oh, yeah, index funds. I've heard of those, but I'm not really sure how they work.
They're basically like baskets of stocks that track a specific market index, like the S&P 500, for example. So instead of buying individual stocks, you're buying a tiny piece of hundreds or even thousands of companies.
So it's built-in diversification.
Exactly. And one of the best things about index funds is that they have really low fees
Oh, why is that?
because they're passively managed. They just follow the market's performance. They're not trying to beat it or anything.
So you're not paying a bunch of money for some fancy fund manager.
Which means more money stays in your pocket.
I like the sound of that.
And then for those who want truly hands-off investing, Sethi recommends life cycle funds.
Life cycle funds, what are those?
It's like a preset portfolio of index funds that automatically adjusts based on your age and your risk tolerance.
So as you get closer to retirement, it becomes more conservative?
Exactly. It's like the ultimate set it and forget it approach.
Yeah.
You choose a fund based on your target retirement date, contribute regularly, and that's it.
Sounds almost too easy.
It can be that simple. But even if you want a bit more control over your investments, Sethi still keeps things pretty straightforward. He basically lays out two paths for investing.
Okay, I'm interested. What are those two paths?
So the first is the simple route using those life cycle funds that we talked about. The second is for those who want to build their own portfolio with individual index funds.
Got it. So if you go the individual index fund route, how do you choose the right ones?
You get some good advice there. Look for funds with low fees, make sure they align with your asset allocation goals, and understand their past performance. But don't get too caught up in past performance because it's not always a guarantee of future returns.
Right, right. And I know Sethi is a big advocate for taking advantage of your 401k, especially if your employer matches your contribution.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's free money. You don't want to leave that on the table.
And then there's dollar cost averaging. I've heard that term thrown around, but I'm not entirely sure what it means.
It's a really simple but powerful concept. It basically means investing consistently over time, no matter what the market is doing.
So instead of trying to time the market and buy low and sell high, you're just staying consistent.
Exactly. It takes the emotion out of it. You just invest a set amount at regular intervals.
I like that. It seems less stressful than constantly checking the market and trying to predict what's going to happen next.
Right. And over the long term, it can be a very effective strategy. So we've talked about setting up a system and choosing investments. Now what? How do you maintain all of this?
Yeah, that's what I wonder. It's not just a one-time setup and then you forget about it.
Right. Sethi talks about the importance of regularly feeding your system.
Feeding your system.
Yeah, basically just making sure you're consistently contributing to your investments so they can grow over time.
Okay, that makes sense.
And he also talks about rebalancing, which is adjusting your portfolio periodically to maintain your desired asset allocation.
Rebalancing, that sounds a little complicated. It's actually pretty simple. As certain investments perform better than others, they can throw your portfolio out of whack.
So you might end up with more money in one asset class than you intended.
Exactly. So rebalancing is just about getting things back in alignment.
Like hitting the reset button.
Kind of, yeah. And make sure that your investments stay aligned with your risk tolerance and your long-term goals. He recommends doing it once a year or every 18 months.
So whether you go with life cycle funds or individual index funds, Sethi's giving you the tools and the knowledge to make smart decisions.
And that's what I find so empowering about his approach. He doesn't just tell you what to do. He explains why it matters and how it all fits into the bigger picture of building lasting wealth.
He wants you to understand the principles behind the advice.
Yeah.
Not just blindly follow some rules.
Exactly.
And that understanding gives you the power to adapt as your life changes and you know your goals evolve.
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's about taking those core principles and making them work for you. It's like he's giving you the tools to be your own financial architect.
Exactly. And, it makes me think about something Sethi said that was really interesting. He argues that a lot of times financial expertise is kind of a myth. Like, we can often do better on our own if we just keep things simple, automate as much as possible, and focus on those long-term strategies. But what if the real expertise is in mastering our own psychology? What if it's about understanding our own biases and our fears and our motivations?
Whoa, that's a really interesting thought. So instead of trying to outsmart the market, we should be focusing on outsmarting ourselves in a way.
Yeah. Sethi's always emphasizing self-awareness. knowing your spending habits, knowing your risk tolerance, knowing what you're actually working towards. He even talks about analyzing your weaknesses and designing systems that support those weaknesses.
So, like, if you know you tend to impulse shop, maybe you set up a separate bank account for guilt-free spending money so you don't overspend.
Exactly. Or if you know you have trouble saving, you automate those transfers every month so you don't even have to think about it.
So you're basically tricking yourself into making good financial choices. I love that.
It's all about leveraging those defaults. All right, so in the spirit of Sethi's philosophy, I have a challenge for you, listener. Become your own financial expert. Don't just blindly follow his advice, or anyone else's for that matter. Take the time to understand those principles, analyze your own situation, and create a system that really works for you. What does financial expertise actually mean to you?
I think that's such an important question, and I think Sethi would agree that it's not about memorizing some rules or formulas. It's about that ongoing process of learning and experimenting and adjusting your approach as you go.
Building wealth is a journey. It's not a destination. And the most valuable expertise you can develop is the ability to navigate that journey with confidence and clarity.
So there you have it, our deep dive into I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. I hope you found it insightful and maybe even spark some ideas for how you can level up your own financial game. Remember, you have the power to create the financial future you want. You just have to take that first step.
And until next time, keep diving deep, keep learning, and keep questioning everything.